Thanks to Hy-Vee for sponsoring the Daily Dish podcast.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Daily Dish, where we talk everything basketball. I'm your host, Christian Royston, joined by my co-host, Logan Shanks, and we got the women's guys on the virtual this time, so a little bit of a change in pace, but this is what we got to do for winter break, so we're rolling through it.
Oh, yeah.
But we'll start with the men's side. You know, we had one game, I guess, over the last week, Florida A&M. You know, these games, I guess there's, you know, it is a team that you're kind of expected to beat by a good amount, but there is still some benefit and stuff what we can see about, I guess, the growth of the team.
Yeah, and one thing we've talked about is that everyone, it seems like someone's going to have their game every time, and this game, it was the Trey King game. He's kind of like Robert Jones has done a couple times this year, and Trey King just got better at it. You saw it a lot against the Rattlers, that just feeding him inside. He was getting to the line pretty early, and just pretty solid game from that front again. Just same thing. It feels like a broken record at this point. Controlling the paint. The threes were coming, and overall just a great defensive game in general from Iowa State, but overall also just Trey King just dominating the paint.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about points in the paint and how they're becoming so dominant in the paint. And that kind of has started with Trey King. I mean, I feel like every game at this point, he's getting the first points off just an easy layup and getting the ball rolling for Iowa State. And I mean, he's able to just get points wherever he can. And not only that, not even on just the defensive end of the floor, but the offensive end of the floor, he's rebounding really well too, which I know was a big focus going into the season.
And it helps too when, you know, not only has Trey King talked about he wants to be one of the best rebounders in the Big 12, and Iowa State in general just wants to control the paint. It helps when you're oversized compared to the other team. I mean, their biggest guy couldn't even guard either Robert Jones or Trey King, and they just took advantage of that right from the jump. And other than Rob Jones and Trey King, everyone on the team really, Jackson, Taman Lipsey, Keyshawn Gilbert, they've all worked their way into the paint. And you just saw another really sound offensive game from the Cyclones.
Yeah. And when you take away the paint, it really opens up everywhere else on the court for the other team. And Iowa State did a good job most of the time protecting the three-pointer, but Florida A&M, kind of similar to how they did against Iowa, they were hitting threes, but I think the big thing was Iowa State was keeping up with them in that area. You know, whenever Florida A&M would hit a three, somebody on the other end would hit a three, whether it was Milan or Taman, who kind of had almost like a quiet, almost 20-point game.
Yeah, and I believe he had, 4 or 5 threes?
5 of 6 from 3.
And they kind of had to match a guy from Florida A&M who he was popping off. I mean, I was surprised that this is a guy playing for Florida A&M. He had 27 points. What was it? Was it 6 or 7 threes?
Yeah, 7 3-pointers.
7 3-pointers as a starter, and it helped because a lot of their guys were getting pretty close to fouling out and getting into foul trouble early, which Iowa State obviously took advantage of. And, you know, again, just another sound game, both offensively and defensively, hitting threes, controlling the paint, and hitting those free throw shots, which, you know, that's going to help, or it's going to pay off when, you know, conference play is getting closer and closer by the day.
Yeah, and I think the other thing was, I mean, Taman hasn't hit that many threes in a game ever. You know, I think last season we were looking at him kind of giving up those open three opportunities, and it really seemed like he was confident out there. Yeah. Which we've kind of seen all year is he's gained this confidence from beyond the arc, and he's become kind of a threat. I mean, we entered the year thinking that maybe Milan was going to be that guy that provided a threat from deep, but it really has been Taman too.
Yeah. Milan hasn't, I mean, his shots from outside have gone down, especially, but that's not a bad thing when, you know, guys like Trey and even Curtis Jones, or not Trey, but Taman Lipsey and Curtis Jones. Trey King did attempt a three-pointer in this game, though, but did not fall. But Taman Lipsey and Curtis Jones, they've been getting better at three-point shooters, and especially with Taman, you alluded to it, you know, he wasn't the greatest three-point shooter last year. Often defenses were leaving him open because they knew he couldn't hit it, but you've obviously seen him get a lot better, and as a point guard, you need that. You need to be able to pop off a three every once in a while, and especially with how Iowa State plays, their threes are coming in transition. So when you can get that going, I mean, Taman Lipsey, again, is just starting to look better and better by the day and one of the best guards in the country.
And I like that you brought up the Trey King 3 attempt because that was one where it was in between two Lipsey threes that he made.
Yeah.
And I saw Trey King go up to the line. I was like, he's not going to shoot that ball. And he took it from the top of the key, and it was a little short.
He said it's coming, though.
Yeah,
It'll come.
Yeah,
It'll fall one day.
I asked him after the game, and he was like, I just wanted to get in the party. I just wanted to join him.
Well, when you're up by whatever it was at that point, 20-25, you can have your big man shoot a three.
Yeah, why not? It was closer than I thought it would be. So, I mean, but along with that, the other person who kind of joined that party, along with King and Taman, was Milan, who also kind of quietly snuck into that third place spot in the scoring.
Yeah, and you saw it. You've seen it a lot throughout these non-conference games as him develop that mid-range shot. And I'll say it again, it is so pretty. I mean, and you have all the confidence in the world that he could hit a shot like that because he's proven to you time and time again, spin around, jumper, fade away. I mean, it's just, he is becoming one of the most dynamic scorers on this team. And he's doing that as a freshman, which is just, it's so surprising to me. And like I said, his 3-point shots will come, but right now, they don't really need him to fall as long as he's working his way inside and getting those fadeaway jumpers that are falling at a high rate.
Yeah, he's still getting quite a few points, and not just from three. But, those mid-range shots, those are tough shots, but he kind of makes them look easy. And I think they kind of need more options. If obviously a team's defending well from three, they can't hit those as easy. And if they figure out that, the paint is the next best option for Iowa State, you really have to look in that in-between area.
Yeah.
And that's where Milan just thrives.
And Milan's a forward, but his length, he's a skinnier forward, but his length has helped him a lot on these shots, mostly from outside. We haven't really seen him a ton inside, and I don't really think you're going to see that. You don't really need to when you have guys like Trey King and Robert Jones, but his versatility as a forward provides a really good dynamic to the offense where if, the guards can't work their ways inside or they can't hit shots from deep, you've got Milan, who is a very solid mid-range shooter.
And speaking of the guards that kind of work their way inside, Keyshawn had kind of a quiet night, still got double digits. But, you have Taman and Keyshawn that can just bull rush their way into the lane, pick up fouls, pick up baskets. And then you have guys underneath the basket that they're pretty solid, pretty consistent at scoring with Rob Jones and Trey King. So you almost don't even need that 3-point threat when you have Milan, who can, if they're guarding the paint, they're able to be wherever they need to be, under the basket. Milan's the guy that can just score whenever they need something outside the paint.
And it seems like everything's been working out for Iowa State, which hopefully it should be during this non-conference stretch. They got 2 more games left, but over on the women's side, they have also done a really good job of rebounding from some tough losses that they had earlier in the season, and they have made some short work in their non-conference schedule lately, starting with their game against Troy. So over on the women's side, what'd you guys kind of think of their matchup against Troy?
So we started with Troy after that win against North Dakota State, and obviously, Brad, this game was an insane offensive breakout from the team, scoring a season-high 105 points at the end of it, which is amazing. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I thought it was big. Not just the 105 points itself, but Emily Ryan returns in this game, and it really felt like her impact there late in the first quarter, carrying over into the second quarter, was kind of what helped put Iowa State ahead in the match and just really took control of it and went on from there to win.
Yes, Emily Ryan coming back from that lower leg injury she sustained over the summer. She'd been dealing with trying to rehab through that leg injury, but even when coach was talking about her limited minutes, she only played 9 minutes in this game coming off the bench. She still contributed 5 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 assists. She just came back and looked like she was her old self, even if she was coming off the bench.
Yeah, and it was a big effort from everyone else, too. You have Audie Crooks and Naidu scoring over 20 points. You've got 5 players in double figures. You've got a lot of players making impacts everywhere on the floor. And I think that this was probably their strongest game of the season to this point.
I agree. And also one of those players you talked about having one of those breakout games was Naidu. I know she talked about her role, even though she's kind of one of the veteran presences, was more defense. But this game, she popped off her season high at 20 points, which was insane. She shot 6 for 7 from the 3-point range, and she just seemed like she couldn't miss that game.
Yeah, her impact was definitely felt there, and also just, making all of her shots too. And it wasn't just her, it was a lot of the other players too. You had Audie Crooks shooting 90% from the field. Naidu shoots over 50%. Addie Brown's right there shooting near 50%. Jalen Bristow makes 6 of her 10 shots, and she gets 17 points. Big game for her. So I think as a group, I think that Emily Ryan's return kind of just, I don't know, it seemed like everyone was playing better knowing that she was back on the court.
Yes, it seemed like all good game for them. One big problem was obviously the turnover game again. They had a season high total of 18 total turnovers for the team. I mean, this is a young team. They're going to experience those type of bumps as a young team, but just know they got to clean that stuff up.
Yeah, it was tough to see, especially after having 11 turnovers in the past 2 games, which was the low for the season, and then to rocket that back up to 18. It was a step in the wrong direction, and hopefully that can start to get cleaned up again because Big 12 play is coming up as the next game.
Yeah, and I like that you guys bring up the turnovers on the women's side, because on the men's side it was almost the opposite, where they actually forced 23 turnovers against Florida A&M, which led to like a third of their points.
Yeah, and they've had success doing that all season, but you really saw it in this Florida A&M game. And if I'm reading that correctly, I didn't even notice this, but they only turned the ball over 5 times, which that's just crazy. 5 to 23, and they probably scored. Like you said,
over 30.
Over 30 points off turnovers. And when you're doing that, you could just tell that Florida A&M was like, all right, well, first of all, we're not coming back from this, and they just can't get their offense going. And they couldn't stop Iowa State, pretty much throughout the entire game.
Yeah. I think it was the first half there, I was counting the turnovers at a point because I was like, oh my gosh, they have like 10 in 10 minutes. I was like, they're averaging a turnover a minute. Yeah. We're sitting next to the other reporters like, oh, there's another one. Like, oh, they might be on pace to turn the ball over 30 times, which is a crazy number.
And not only were they turning the ball over, but they were also fouling a lot, like I said earlier. They got a lot of their guys in a foul trouble early on, and that just helped out Iowa State a ton and just made another blowout win for them.
Yeah. And kind of on the other side, we'll go back to the women because they had a second game this week. The UNI game, I feel like they started off kind of a little slow, but they ended up actually kind of running away with that game later on. So we'll get their thoughts on it.
So yes, after the Troy game, Iowa State took on their another in-state rival in UNI, and obviously it's their third in-state rival game, end of the non-con too, but couldn't find a better way to end it off, getting their first in-state win this season. And Brett, what are your thoughts on it?
Oh, I thought it was a great game. Obviously started a little slow. UNI gets out to a 10-2 lead, but Iowa State fights back to tie it at 16 at the end of the first quarter. And I think mainly that was due to, again, Emily Ryan's impact late in the first quarter. She makes a layup to tie the game to end the first quarter. And I think that kind of shifted the momentum of things. She had a great sequence in the second quarter where she made a 3, got a steal, and then made a layup on the other end. And that 5-point play just put Iowa State ahead, and they never looked back from there.
It never did. And one player I wanted to continue talking about was Kelsey Jones. She came off the bench again. She kind of had started to slip a little bit, at least in the points department. But this game, she just had a point breakout. She had 16 points. I know it wasn't her best, but still, she played 24 minutes, shot 6 for 8, 3 for 4 from 3-point range, and she led that bench breakout that also had 3 of the 6 cycle on the double figures.
Yeah, 11 of her points came in the second half, and that was really due to a big third quarter for Kelsey. There was another play in the fourth quarter where Emily Ryan found her for an easy layup, and that Kelsey was running down the court smiling after that. So it just shows how much she loves the game and how much she loves playing for Iowa State. But yeah, like you said, having 6 scorers get in the double digits, this is the third game in a row that the Iowa State women have had 5 or more players get into double-digit scoring. So it really feels like the offense is starting to click, and that's a good sign now that the non-conference season has wrapped up.
I agree with that. Obviously you saw earlier in the season the young team struggling to find their footing together, and now you see they're starting to gel together really as a team. They're finding each other, finding their open looks, and actually hitting their looks, which is really could really help come Big 12. But I also wanted to talk about one key factor in that UNI game was Maya McDermott on the other side for UNI. I mean, they could not stop her. She just was on a rampage. I mean, she scored her career high, which is 30 points, and what I found interesting, what Coach Fenley said, he even compared him to like Caitlin Clark out there. I mean, she looked like her going out there on that court on Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, every time that you and I went down the court, it was McDermott pretty much getting the ball, scoring. It felt a lot like the Iowa game. Just her presence there really kept you and I in the game. Whenever Iowa State scored, a lot of times on the other end, you and I had an answer, and most of the time it was McDermott. So really, really impressed with her play there. And Iowa State was able to stop it in the end, but 30 points is quite a lot.
And we also talk about Addie Brown. I mean, we talked about her for the past couple podcasts about her. I mean, she's been consistently getting double doubles like nothing anymore. Like it's just coming easy to her. Like now after the UNI game, it's officially a 5-game streak that she's had at least a double double, going back to the St. Thomas game where she didn't have it, but started off after that. But I mean, she just had an enormous impact on this team. I know she's not really the highest scorer on the team, but she consistently puts up points and contributing on other facets of the game.
Yeah, I mean, she was close again to another triple-double, 7 assists, just 3 short there. And it was interesting earlier in the week when she mentioned that she had only 1 triple-double in high school. Again, it's still just a matter of time before it comes for her in college. And another interesting thing, too, is you look at the minutes played. Addie Brown plays 34 minutes, second most of the team, but the most of the freshmen. So she's obviously making an impact out there. And her free throw shooting was good, too, shooting 4 for 4. And as a team collectively, the free throw shooting I thought was the best in this game, shooting 16 of 21 as a whole. And it wasn't just Audie Crooks getting to the line. It was a lot of other characters getting to the line and making their free throws tonight or that night.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I also wanted to talk about, I know we talked about this in the previous podcast or two about the second quarter team. Like you see now with UNI and even the Troy game, like they're consistently like hiring up their percentage in the second quarter. Like they're pushing their foot on the gas. I know they start slow kind of in the first quarter, but then they just really ramp it up like before, where they kind of like took it down a notch. Just obviously like the Drake game, they struggled in the second quarter shooting, but it's a really great job of what Coach Fenley has done with this team to really just get them on the gas for the second quarter and beyond.
Yeah, this second quarter against UNI really felt like the best second quarter Iowa State's played this season. And again, you look at Emily Ryan's impact that she had there. She facilitated it well and had the Cyclones take control.
So with the conclusion of the UNI game, I guess the Iowa State women are done with their non-con. Iowa State still has 2 more. I guess this will be aired after the Thursday night game. So kind of see how they face off against Eastern Illinois, and then they have 1 left after Christmas, and then it's Big 12 play.
Yeah, the players, the coaches, they've always really been preaching from the beginning of non-conference through through this whole season. They preach that, you can't let up in these bye games. You got to stay focused. There's been a couple teams, you see them on Sports Center, Twitter, whatever it is, a high major team loses to a low major or a mid-major team, and you just got to stay focused with these last couple games. The players know that, coaches know that, and, it's obviously preparing them for Big 12 play, which they're obviously going to need because all the other teams of the Big 12, none of them have taken a step back. I think there's 5 teams in the top 25 right now, so just preparing them for those matchups that they got coming up here the next couple weeks.
Yeah, and we can start off with those. The first one Iowa State takes on the road is against Oklahoma, who is coming off a loss to North Carolina.
Yeah.
But North Carolina is a good team as well. Mm-hmm. And before that, they were undefeated. So they're sitting right now at 10-1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the big thing with the Big 12 is that it's all going to be about winning the road matchups, because at home you should win all of your, or at least most of your home conference games. But if you can sneak out wins on the road against an Oklahoma, just the ones that you can't drop against like the lower ranked Big 12 teams. So like maybe a Texas Tech, a Cincinnati, a UCF. You got to make sure that you can take those easy wins, I guess, on the road, and that'll bolster up only your overall schedule, but your conference schedule and help you out down the road.
Mm-hmm. Especially with how good Iowa State is at home. Mm-hmm. You kind of almost expect them to win at home.
Yeah.
Even against tough teams.
Yeah. I mean, we saw this last year against Kansas, against Texas. They've shown that they're a team that can be, top 25 teams, top 10 teams. Again, that's with different guys on the roster, but this team looks better than those teams the last couple of years.
Yeah, like this team actually has an offense, which is saying a lot compared to the last 2 years. In the last 2 years, they were still really good, even without an offense.
Yeah, we know what Iowa State is now. They just have to keep doing that through these next couple games, see how it works out in Big 12 play, and I think it will. Just pressure, that constant pressure in the paint and finding the threes when they're open in transition. I think it's going to help them out these next couple games and just get them prepared for, again, going up against the best conference in the nation.
Oh, yeah. But before that, they still do have to survive the non-cons.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned they don't want to fall asleep right now. You really have to focus and finish strong.
Yeah.
And, that starts at Eastern Illinois, who is a team that, really competed well against Kansas, another Big 12 school.
Yeah, and they have 6 wins. They're at the 500 mark right now, 6-6 while we're recording this. And they have only... they've only given up 11 turnovers a game, and we looked at that against Kansas. They gave up 12, I want to say. And then their other big matchup was against Illinois, where they only gave up 8. They actually won the turnover battle against Illinois,
but lost by almost 30.
So, they're still. I think they're a fine team. Iowa State should take care of them, but like you said, definitely not a team. These next couple, that you can just slate past. You still got to treat it like a real game, and just getting you prepared for conference play.
Yeah, and then they have a good break before their last non-con game, which, we'll kind of see how they take that time off and if they're able to hit that last one good and get the momentum going, because going into Oklahoma is going to be kind of a tough ask.
Yeah, because, it's going to be the same thing with Oklahoma. They're going to bounce back from their game against North Carolina, get these next couple wins, get them ready for, when they have to take on Iowa State. And, they played them pretty close, I would want to say, for the most part. I think the final score doesn't really, capture what the game really was. And TJ said that he was actually watching that game because that was last Saturday. Or no, that was yesterday. Never mind. I take that back.
He was watching other Big 12 games.
He was watching a different UNC game because you talked about that on Media Day. But regardless.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough matchup anyways. Going on the road to any Big 12 school is going to be kind of tough. So they do kind of have to focus up, use the momentum from these last few non-con games to feel the start to Big 12 play.
Yeah, and that's the same with the women's team, who have it coming even closer for them. So Brett Pavley, what are they kind of looking? What's the women's team looking like for their next couple games in conference play once that starts?
Yes, after the UNI game, now they get a little bit of a break before conference play. But before we want to start conference play, I just wanted to talk about just the importance of these games. The one ranked team they played was Iowa, and even then they only lost by 9 and kept it real close all game. Just these really, like we talked about earlier, the gelling of the team really helps. Just getting to know each other, just helping facilitate, find their open spots, just might help them coming in the Big 12 play.
Yeah, it really feels like this team, when they play cohesively as one, they look really good. I mean, it feels like these past few games, they've gotten better and better. I mean, I feel like I've seen it. Probably, I don't know if you've seen it too. I bet you probably have. But, I mean, they just look like they're a really good basketball team on both ends of the court. And, these non-conference games, they were definitely important. I think the Iowa game of them was the most important. I know they lost, but they still looked really good against the Hawkeyes, and I think that they can fare well in the Big 12 this year.
And now coming into conference play, their first game in the conference will be against Oklahoma State in Stillwater on December 30th, and they're no letdown. Obviously, they talked about on the men's side being the best basketball conference or one of the better ones. I agree with the same. Even on the women's side, like the Big 12 is a really, really tough conference for basketball. And I mean, Oklahoma State isn't no slouch. They're undefeated at home, 7-3 overall, and they just have looked really well.
Yeah, I think that the undefeated streak at home for Oklahoma State is what's worrying me the most. Also, the fact that the Cyclones have played 5 straight games at home, and now you've got a 10-day break, and your first Big 12 game is on the road against a team that hasn't lost at home. So it's going to be a big test for the Cyclones. We'll see how it plays out. I'm hopeful that it's going to be good, but we'll just have to wait and see.
I know it should help with that 3-game win streak, even though it was all at home. Like you can't like not knock their confidence going into this. You know that even though they're going on a mini break for the holidays, like there's a lot of confidence going into this matchup, even if it is on the road. Like it should be a fun one.
Yeah, the momentum that the Cyclones have built is big. Having so many scorers, 5 or more the past 3 games. You have a game where you score over 100 points. You've got Emily Ryan back, and we'll have to see how her progression goes. She played 9 minutes against Troy, looked really good. She played 16 minutes against UNI and looked even better. So I think that it's only a matter of time before Emily Ryan, starts to get those minutes built back up and possibly could make a return to the starting lineup.
Yeah, and I like that you guys bring up Emily Ryan returning to the lineup because on the men's side, we're still kind of seeing a timetable for Hassan Ward, who we were expected to be done, or I guess back on the court after non-con play ended. And right now, I think they're kind of going into break. Still kind of unsure when he's coming back, but he's going to be kind of in the similar situation to Emily Ryan where he will come back when, I guess, during an important time of the year, when it kind of matters, and he will most likely get limited minutes as well.
And having Emily Ryan come back into that line or coming off the bench for them, seeing that her minutes go up. I've just seen the past couple of games. I think it's a completely different team with her out there. I mean, she just drives the offense, and she's getting steals. She's playing tight defense on the other end and just commanding everyone else. It's a very young team outside of Naidu and some other veterans out there, but she's really just been the key factor, or one of the key factors, I would say, in the success that they've seen the past couple of years. And with Hassan Ward coming back, I'm really interested to see where Iowa State's at now, and then adding Hassan Ward back in. I mean, they've looked better every game since he left, and not to say that he wasn't doing a good job, because he was playing really well in that starting spot, but TJ actually talked about it, that Rob Jones, every year he's been here, he's been on the bench, and then he becomes the starter. I think Rob Jones probably goes back to the bench, which isn't a bad thing, because if you can, the bench has really gotten better, but regardless, Hassan Ward coming back, like you said, we're not really sure. We've heard that it's supposed to be once conference play starts, but it's starting to sound uncertain the last couple weeks, so we'll see what happens. I think he will come back, but I would say maybe even after the first couple games, he might still be sitting on that bench.
Yeah, especially as we get deeper into conference play. I think, especially with him having a leg injury too, you want to make sure that's healed up, especially somebody who's in the paint, in the post, really like putting a lot of, I guess, strain on your legs. You kind of don't want to rush an injury like that.
Yeah.
And I think with how well Rob Jones is playing, how well I guess Trey King is playing, really anybody who's in that spot who usually would be coming off the bench like Rob Jones, they're having significant minutes in place of Hassan Ward. So it's not a big deal if they need to wait to bring him back on.
Right. And I'm sure it'll be the same situation with Emily Ryan, where he'll get minutes and then work his way back into the starting lineup. I don't think they're just going to throw him right back in there. And also, I would say it's kind of a bigger deal to have him come back, because it wouldn't be that big of a deal if you had a big that was coming off the bench making up for the minutes that Robert Jones is having to play at the starting position, where he would usually play off the bench. I would say if Omaha was a step closer into his progression, you'd be all right with it. But not having a big coming off the bench that is, a veteran or playing really well, during a certain stretch, it might hurt them when, other Big 12 teams have multiple bigs coming off the bench, fresh, and just kind of having their way with Iowa State when Trey King and Robert Jones may not be doing so well or are tired, really.
Yeah, and we're kind of looking at Omaha and even Demarion Watson to have a little bit more impact on the game when they're coming in, because really the bench players are just guards. You have Jackson, who's been that really good spark plug to the team, and then you have Kurt Jones, who provides pretty good scoring whenever he's on. So they really just need a big to come in. And that was Rob Jones, but now he's starting.
Yeah, so they're really just trying to find that, really solid 8-man rotation. Omaha played a little bit towards the end, as did Demarion Watson. They played in spurts against Florida A&M, but then kind of took over in the last probably 4 minutes. But that's not really what you want to see in Big 12 play when you have guys like that only playing realistic minutes late in the game. So maybe these next 2 games we'll see some different stuff out of them and the roles that they serve on the bench. But obviously having Hassan Ward come back will be huge once he does in conference play. Yeah,
and I think the big thing is, TJ obviously is creative in his lineups. And I think when you have guys like Jackson and Kurt that come in off the bench, you can really mess around with 4-guard lineups and different variations of really playing a lot of guards and smaller forwards instead of having 2 big men on the court at a time. Trey King can be the big man, or Milan can be the big man. Well, you have 4 other guards in, and I think it's shown to kind of work at times.
Yeah, we've seen some interesting lineups for sure out of TJ and his systems, and they've all really kind of worked. I don't really think there's a lineup that I've seen that's been very negative in terms of plus minus, but obviously when you want a certain set rotation when you go into Big 12 play, I think they had that last year, and that's why they saw some success. So, although this team is looking better than the last couple of years, you really want to have that set rotation, whether it be an 8 or a 9-man rotation going into conference play.
Yeah, for sure. And especially, we're going to keep reiterating throughout all of conference play. We've already talked about it. The Big 12 is a tough place to play. So if you're not on top of your game, then it's going to be tough to get wins, especially with how good a lot of the teams that Iowa State plays are. They have to play Houston twice. They have to play Kansas. They have to start with Oklahoma. There really is no game where they can kind of take off and try to figure out their rotations and stuff. That's, goes back to the importance of non-con. They have to have stuff figured out by the start of Big 12 play.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I am ready for Big 12 play to see what this team can do in it. We've seen them beat up on some of these non-conference teams. Thankfully, we've only got 2 more games left of that, and we'll be ready for Big 12 play where we will see some Titans clash in, like you said, probably the most entertaining conference to watch throughout these last couple of years.
Yep, most entertaining and probably most competitive. So I guess all we can do is wait for the non-con games to play out and get strapped in for Big 12 play. Should be fun. So thanks everybody for watching and listening, and we'll see you guys next time on the Daily Dish.